Nerds. Kakank. Welcome back to Return of the Funky Man. Return to normalcy. Return to pencil to pencil. Gondor calls for aid and pencil to pencil for answer. Oh, that's right. That was the hordes of Gondor. You heard it here first, guys. Welcome back to Pencil to Pencil, your weekly Wednesday 8 p.m. video scope approved live stream where you get to hang out with three expert cartoonists, and we get to do this a lot. We get to pitch our arms and make sure we're not dreaming. You know the Inception kick? You know, like when the chair goes back like that? That's pencil to pencil, baby. You're swimming in it. And I'm so happy to be your first Inceptor. Wait, that doesn't sound right. Guys, let's do some intros. My name is JAMAR NICHOLAS, your well-seasoned and well-traveled first co-host. I wear many hats besides this one. I am on the board of the National Cartoonist Society and also the Philadelphia chapter chair, Go Birds. Also on top of all of that, I have a new volume of my middle grade graphic novel series at Scholastic coming out. Leon and the Big Problem will be in stores January 2020, 27.
The big 2020, 2020.
John Stossel will be announcing my.
You're gonna body slam John Stossel. What do you mean you don't believe in?
That's right. You think this is fake? We're showing our age. Stone Cold, what should they do about pre-ordering that book?
They should bitty cop it. Why don't you?
We're doing the whole 70s run. We're running the trench. I would be remiss. I would be remiss if it was not said that I was going to introduce my right said friend, my co-host, cohort, and co-conspirator and co-conquistador. You may have almost run him over or maybe splashed him with a torrential downpour as he hitchhiked his way up the side of the internet superhighway with a melodic tinkle at his back. You know him and love him. By God, it's Stone Cold Steve Conley. What's up, Steve Conley?
Gentlemen, it is so good to see you. I'm honored to be Comics' Bill Bixby. My name is Steve Conley. You may know me from the Courtship of Eddie's Father. I'm running out of Bill Bixby references.
Wow.
But also from the webcomic The Middle Age, which you can find over at Webtoons, Tap as Go Comics, and on my own website, middleagecomic.com. And
did you say your OF website? Is that what you said?
My OF, no, my own website, middleagecomic.com.
Yes.
My OF, I'm catching up. I'm aware of the Urban Dictionary. But I would be remiss if I didn't introduce the Tower of Power of the Manny Hour, Too Sweet to Be Sour, the Cocoa to my Cocoa Puffs. I'm out of Co-Conquistadors and Co.
I'm your Frankenberry to your Count Chocula.
Perfect. The Frankenberry to my Count Chocula. It is Mike Manley.
Oh.
Hello, everyone. I was going to show some, because we always talk about drawing childhoods. Yeah. And so this week, if you guys bring that up.
Oh, Steve, you got that?
Got it.
Okay, is that up now? Okay.
Mm-hmm.
So this week, I posted this coloring book that I did in the mid 80s. And this literally was a flood of people going, I had that.
Oh,
wow.
I had that coloring book as a kid. So I literally this week, and I posted a Barbie coloring book that I did.
Mm-hmm.
And I literally was deluged with a flood of, I had that coloring book. So,
well, Mike, I have a question. So even back then, and I say back then with air quotes, it was more of you did a gig and you moved on to the next gig. There was no feedback. right? Your stuff was just in the world, and you moved on to the next thing. But now in the internet age, it all kind of catches up, and people can actually corner you at the 7-Eleven to say, "Hey, Mike Manley, I had that Dino Riders. I colored in the lines."
I colored it all black with a rage strength of a 3-year-old with a big giant circling black mark in the middle of the page. Right?
So, and also, I think what a lot of people may not know or may not think about is when you get gigs like this. I wonder if people think that you're supposed to be familiar with the source material, or you're supposed to be like, "Yeah, I'm a fan of Dino Riders." You're like, "Dude, is the check clearing or not?"
Well, when I started working in comics in '84, I did a lot of different jobs, right? Like you would do a comic job, and then you would do. This is one of those jobs. I think I told the story before. This is one of the jobs that I got because my girlfriend at the time was doing a job for Golden Books. And that's the all-nighter, the 3 days in a row, no sleep, going to New York, delivering her job to her agent in person. Remember, then I got my pocket picked.
Yeah. That was last week's story.
Yeah, last week or week before, right? But his wife was the art director at Golden Books. And in appreciation for me doing him a skinny, because it actually wasn't my job.
Right.
He gave me, I want to say her name was Natalie Provenzano. I'm not sure. That's what sticks in my head, but anyway. She gave me the name of this lady named Joan Sir, who worked for Western Publishing, because Western Publishing and Golden Books were like together. They would produce all these coloring books. And so I started doing coloring books, activity books, right? I did all kinds of different ones. And because I was flexible stylistically, that allowed me, and every fall there'd be like the Centurions or the Visionaries or Dino Riders or Pretenders or this thing or that thing. It was all these, and then they would make coloring books for all the new shows. So I started getting these gigs which paid pretty good. I remember something like this would probably pay like $3,500, which in like 1984, that was damn good money. That's
not bad. And generally, how many you would almost call it spot art, even though it's a full page, right? How many illustrations would you have to turn in for a gig like this?
Sometimes they varied. Sometimes it'd be like 30. Sometimes it'd be 60. So what I would get is like a package of reference. And then somebody would have laid it out and say, draw, the alien on top of the platform, on top of the Tyrannosaurus, right?
Right.
And then you'd see there would be usually like a little copy at the bottom,
right?
And so, you draw it and you'd send it in, depending upon the licensor. If it was Disney or especially like Mattel when I did the Barbie. It would go to Mattel and they would go like, trim Barbie's boobs like 1%, make her leg 1%. They were she had a very specific proportion.
Yeah.
But sometimes on something like this, I actually went and bought the toys because you had to draw these things, and they're pretty. As you can see, they're pretty complicated.
Right. Yeah.
Right. They're pretty complicated. So I would go and I would buy the toys. And then, because you had to turn them from the different angles. So you'd have model sheets, but just like when I worked on the Transformers, the animation model sheets had nothing to do with the toy.
Right, because the toys don't look like the cartoon either.
No.
Right, that was the disconnect.
Yeah, and so I remember my first Marvel job was that Transformers comic. So I'm looking at the model sheet and I'm having to draw, what was it, like Starscream or whatever, and I'm looking at the model sheet of the show, which they didn't always give you like a ton of angles.
Right.
Sometimes you didn't even get a full turn. So you'd be looking at the toy, you'd be looking at the model sheet, and you'd kind of like try to figure somewhere in the middle, you know?
Yeah.
And, you know, this is a coloring book, so it's supposed to be, they want a detail, but still simple enough, you know, with a bold line for kids to color. And my buddy at the time, John Hebink, who had just moved out, helped me on this. So usually what I would do is I would go through and I would lay them all out. And then John would tighten up the pencils. And then I would, on some of them, like this one is all mine. The other one I think John on the girl, because that looks like a John Hebink girl.
That does look like a Hebink. Yeah.
Right. And I think I laid this one out and then he penciled it and then I inked it. So, you know, it was always fun, but I had tons and tons of people come up and say, or write me and go, I had that coloring book. That was So, and it's weird now because that's what, 40 years ago? 40 years ago.
Yeah, that was before Jurassic Park came out.
Yeah.
Yeah. So
that was before Cadillacs and Dinosaurs. There was I think that came out just before Mark did Cadillacs and Dinosaurs.
That was like, you got to be a diehard Dino fan because it's just like pre-Jurassic Park and post-Jurassic Park.
Right, and then I know supposedly Steve Gordon, we've had on the show, the character designer, an animator. He did walk cycles for the show, and evidently William Stout worked on designing these things. So that would be just like one job that I would get, and the next job might be Jammy Pies or Pretenders or whatever, or Centurions. And so
I think this is an interesting conversation, Mike, because I think people would assume, because you're a dude, you're not going to do Barbie books, right? But it's just like, whatever, man, it doesn't matter. Can you talk?
You had to get approved because you had to do it. I think I had to do a test. Just like Lucasfilm, when I did that Star Wars book, you had to become a Lucasfilm approved artist. So you had to do a test of the book and that style to send to Lucasfilm, and then they would go yay or nay, right? And Disney was very protective, probably the most protective of all the companies, because you don't see bad Disney stuff. You don't see like really janky drawings of Mickey Mouse or any of those characters. They were very, very protective. So whenever you would do something for Disney, it would literally go to Disney. This is in the 80s. And they would have somebody who was good at drawing like Winnie the Pooh go like, no, the dent is here, not there, right? It would be like take a piece of tracing paper and go over it. So you would actually get a physical correction. Now that, you know, nobody does stuff like that now. It's all done over the internet. But before the internet,
you hear that, Steve? Your poo dent is misaligned. Get your poo dent right.
It's like Linus's head. If you get that dent on his head wrong, it looks like his cousin. Dent, not Linus.
Dinty Van Pelt.
That's Denton, my cousin.
You threw me off with that. I'm laughing now.
But you know, you had to go the extra mile yourself. I remember, you know, like with like the Centurions, I did a couple of them. I think I did some for Marvel. So everybody was doing, Marvel had their own coloring books, things like that. So I remember going to like Toys R Us and buying the toys because all those toys were like really complicated.
Right.
You know, and you did like, what's all these little things? And they'd have a little gun and everyone had like little attachments and everything.
Right.
And, you know, Western was sort of Golden Books was at the mercy of whatever they could get from the animation studio.
Mm-hmm.
Right. And it's not like it is now where there's like this synergy between the companies and everybody has, you know, you just go to like when I did that Tron book, they sent me 4 gigs worth of reference.
Wow.
I mean, it was literally like the stuff from the film, like all the people standing, right? Really high res. And that stuff was really complicated, right? And then you have to go like, okay, how do I take this really super complicated thing and turn it into a drawing for a coloring book? So they all had that, you know, all that ribbing and lines and all that stuff. And sometimes there's like texture, and then you have to go like, well, I guess I better leave the texture out. But so all the stuff is posted on my Instagram. So if you go to my Instagram, you can see plenty of samples of the stuff. And so that's how I did a lot. I made a lot of money. I made my living doing a lot of those coloring and activity books, which is why I always tell people, it's like, if you have really solid drawing, you know, basic solid drawing skills, you can draw a Jammy Pie, or you can draw Spider-Man, or you can draw Conan, or because you never know what your next job is going to be, you know. And that those things, you know, saved my ass when I didn't have comic work.
So it's really kind of a shame that, and I don't want to turn this into what's our other thing? Chat and chew. We got so many shows.
Chew and spit.
Where, if you think about like even decades, where there is kind of like flush art gigs, like I would think about in the late '80s and the '90s, where there were a lot of magazine illustration gigs. Like Entertainment Weekly was a really great gig to get.
Preview,
Preview magazine, all of those things. Like, and you know, they always were using cartoonists. I mean, you kind of, once you were in, you were kind of in, but all of that stuff doesn't exist anymore. So if you have a monthly comic in the back of like Field and Stream, hey, that's awesome. You know what I mean? There's just not a lot of those anymore.
There was a magazine, probably at least into the 70s, maybe in the 80s. There was a magazine that was published that told you all the magazines that bought cartoons, or a newsletter or a pamphlet that you could subscribe to, that said, you know, this is Field and Stream, this is what they pay, this is what they're looking for, this is Psychology Today, you know, like all kinds of magazines that nobody remembers anymore. But if you were a gag cartoonist,
right,
that wasn't that I always forget it, the Artist Guild handbook,
graphic artist,
Graphics Artist Guild handbook, and they had ones that were like to a business, right? Just kind of like you said, like there was one for a magazine illustration, there was one for I remember that. All this stuff is gone. It's all gone.
Well, the thing is that I think one of the things that young people don't know, because they're young, is that that's how the business used to be.
Right.
And I know people who literally used to take their portfolio up to New York, and they would go around and drop it at different places and then get work. Right? Nobody does that. And, you know, for a while, people were sending postcards. Remember, everybody was mailing postcards.
Oh, yeah, that was part of your deal.
2000s, but that was everybody was making postcards and sending postcards out to art directors, right?
Seeing your postcard pinned to the board of an art director was like, you know, this money in the bank.
Yeah.
There was a question here from our buddy Cruisin' Bill. What up, Cruisin' Bill? Cruisin' Bill says, Mike, did you have to buy the toys you use for reference, or did they supply them?
Nobody supplied. They sent you the paper. I probably still have some around here. They would send you the paper, which was like, oh man, you wish you could get that paper now. That was that good old Strathmore.
The good stuff.
They would send you the paper with the non-photo blue printed on it with, where this is where the text will go. This is where the illustration, all the crop marks. So you would just draw that on and you'd mail that in.
Mm-hmm.
So,
have you seen that artwork turn up anywhere?
I'm sure it probably all went in a landfill somewhere. What's really interesting is if you go and you look up Western Publishing, because they used to also, go. You can look it up on the internet. It's really interesting to read the history of that company, and they're defunct now, but they lasted a very, very long time. And doing that a couple years ago, because I was trying to give a lead to Ling Yang and Mimi, on my assistants at the time, because I always say, like, this is a good gig. There are still companies that make coloring books. So for people who are stylistically flexible, do a little legwork, because those things pay pretty decent money. You can probably, now you would do it all digitally. You wouldn't be sending anything anywhere. But if you're hungry and you're looking for work, do yourself a little favor tonight and start looking for coloring book, activity book stuff. But yeah, when I did the Hot Wheels, I had to go buy the Hot Wheels.
I'm always astonished. People have so many hobbies and things, but I'm always astonished that there are really strong Hot Wheel collectors. Like just how we bum rush the G.I. Joe pegs. They're waiting for those Hot Wheels, buddy. I love it. So our good buddy Bross, what up, Bross, says, I just looked and they still mail out physical copies of Boy's Life, Scout's Life now. Wow, shout out to Scout's Life.
Right, but do they have illustrations?
No, that's a whole
right.
other thing.
See, there's not. I mean, most magazines no longer have a budget. But the New Yorker is the only one that I can really think of that still has cartoons. And really, that's about the writing more than it is about the drawing. I think in the case of something like the New Yorker. But that used to be a lot of people used to make their living doing, they'd have 10, 15 regular clients.
In the kind of the back end, this is kind of pre the super internet, a really coveted gig that a friend of mine had that I met from that, Norm Von Scott, who used to do Shu and Chan in the back of Electronic Games magazine.
There you go.
Right. He had a full back page, and I was just like, man, I would have killed for that. You know what I mean? But yeah, it's a whole nother world. So guys, before we run out of time, we turn this into a chat and chew. I cannot remember what we called other things. I have to admit I'm a little jet lagged. I've been on the run. We've gathered here today. Your three expert cartoonists have gathered here today to draw jaw. Intruder alert. Well, you got the jaw part. Now we got to get to the draw part. So if this is your first time watching this live stream, you get to watch your three expert cartoonists draw for you. Well, not necessarily for you, but you can watch us draw. And we kind of pass the conch around and show
cartoonists.
Speaking of that, because that's like the Horde of God door. It wasn't a conch, was it? This is funny. We're kind of all over the place today. Somebody asked me, sorry about the dog. Somebody asked me, I think I had a library visit, and they asked me what my favorite book as an adult was. And I'll be honest, I'm not as strong as of a reader as I used to be. And I tried to go back to some old stuff, and it doesn't hold me anymore. But I said it's Lord of the Flies by William Golding is my favorite book.
Did you see that Netflix, the new Netflix Lord of the Flies?
Is it out already?
Yeah, they redid a remake.
Oh no! But what I think is really interesting about Lord of the Flies is that it's such a strong, kind of almost like a hero's not only a hero's journey thing, but it's such a prevalent part of the stuff that we're into now. Like Hunger Games is Lord of the Flies, Survivor is Lord of the Flies, Squid Games is Lord of the Flies. You know what I mean? It's like it's all the same.
Squidward is Lord of the Flies.
Squidward from SpongeBob is Lord of the Flies. So Lost is Lord of the Flies. You know what I mean? It's anything like that is so easy to trace back to that. So I wonder if anybody in the chat has a book that they love that they can kind of point in pop culture to where it's been kind of taken from. Has nothing to do with what we're drawing. But. So all right, we're gonna pass the conch. I see Mike's on the board. Mike, I'm going to put you on the screen. What are you drawing tonight?
So, just for the heck of it, this was one of two sets of samples that I took to show around in Chicago in 1984 that led me to get work. So I did this funny animal Bigfoot thing called Trax Rover, which actually led me to get work assisting Judy Hunt when she was doing Robotech, and that's because I was really good at doing all the like the perspective stuff. So I want to finish this project after what 40 years, but I found one of my layouts. So I was going to ink on one of these pages.
That's really neat.
Which was weird because I had a Batman sample, and then I had this. But because I was good at drawing robots and good at drawing perspective, that led me to get a job, my first job, helping her on DC, which led to me like getting my first cover gig and everything. So it wasn't my more realistic Batman samples.
Right.
Everybody liked this stuff way more than my Batman samples.
That's so funny, Mike, because I think if people, well, you're a pure cartoonist, so I think it'll be hard for somebody to go, oh, Mike doesn't draw that stuff.
No, I would say that 99% of people don't associate me with doing this type of work.
Right.
They think of me as like, Batman or Darkhawk or, more realistic stuff. But I have always, from the very beginning, loved to do this type of work, right? But in comics, they tend to cast you. Like if you do Batman, then that's all you do.
Right.
You don't do anything else. If you do funny, that's all you do, right? They don't. The further back you go, you actually find people that could do both. But today, you usually have people that just usually do one style. Like it's Jack Kirby could do funny stuff. For Frazetta, people forget. Steve worked on that book. Look at Frank Frazetta's early stuff. He did tons of funny animal stuff that doesn't look anything like Conan.
Right.
So I'm gonna ink on one of these pages tonight. But yeah, from the very beginning, I was doing stuff like this, and I would do these little layouts, and then I would blow them up, and then transfer them off on my light box.
I was going to ask you about your supplies back then, like if you're using straight up onion skin, or you already had your light box.
That was the
your process. Your process.
That was the piece of plexiglass on my lap with the light underneath it. My ghetto light box.
Your your lap burn light box.
It's like,
I gotta turn this off. It's gotta cool down. So I guess I'll go next. I'm not ready, but I am going to revisit something that I started working on a couple of Drawn Jaws ago. Because, you kind of like, sometimes I was kind of proud of myself when I finished that Doctor Doom piece, like right after we did a show, because I'm so guilty of not finishing things like that. I was working on this Leon piece a couple of episodes ago, and I'm just going to try to get back into that. So
Yeah, I love that.
thank you. And this was from a sketch that I worked on at a con that I wanted to tighten up and like maybe do something else with. So I was pretty proud of that. So I'm going to get back into that. And I believe Mike and I work in Clip Studio Paint. Cannot speak for Mr. Conley, who does what he wants to do.
I'm off the reservation. I can show what 2 weeks ago we were working on a piece. I was working on a Savage Dragon piece. I could share how that turned out. But then tonight I'm just going to be working on some just cartooning, just loosening up and just having fun. Share screen, window. This is how it turned out. It was a piece. It's a piece for the Baltimore Comic-Con. They have their yearbook every year, and the theme is this time around is Savage Dragon. And so it's a nod to.
Can you bigerize that?
I don't know if I can. I could zoom in. I'll zoom in on the illustration.
Yeah. Zoom in on it. Yeah.
That's great.
Is that in Procreate?
Yes.
Chris Eliopoulos has something to say about this.
And so the idea was to just create something in the style of the classic D&D red box, because it's Savage Dragon, it's dragons. My stuff's very fantasy oriented. There's a classic cover, a painting by Larry Elmore, which is gorgeous.
Yeah.
Of the kind of barbarian swinging the sword at the red dragon, and so my little take on it, and then I get to add some little goofy text to it, but it was really fun to do. Then I bring it into Photoshop, do the lettering, and add some cracks on the top of it to make it look a little weathered. Pretty happy with how it turned out.
Yeah. Did you? Is that the actual typeface?
Close to it.
Yeah.
Close to it. I didn't use their trademarked ampersand.
Right.
So you might get in trouble for that.
It really isn't D&D. I mean, I add some little funny light text at the bottom. This is a fantasy role-playing game, and that this game does not exist. It's a fantasy. The makers of this game, which does not exist, would like to assure you that they don't exist either. And most importantly, no refunds. Ages 10 and up. So, and then I put my little TMA logo at the middle-age logo at the bottom, like the old TSR logo.
I love the cheek, Steve Conley.
Silly, but that's how that turned out.
Do you think there's kind of like we kind of live in a society where everybody is snarky, but not everybody is funny and snarky or clever. Like I think of
Steve.
Right. Like I think of like Steve is a very biting wit, or even kind of like a Douglas Adams, or even like
high praise.
Or even that who's that, the cat that everybody is mad at? Maybe not mad at, the dungeon crawler Carl dude who does pretty satirical stuff. And it's like there's only so many people that can kind of like figure out how to bend words in a way that people go, oh wow, you're smart and it's funny and it's not what I thought you were going to say.
Yeah, there's a goal of my writing is to make it kind of a linguistic MC Escher. I want it to make sense at a first glance, and the more you look at it, the more you disassemble it, the more messed up it is, and hopefully it finds its way to being funny. But that's high praise. I think Douglas Adams is one of my heroes in terms of messing with people. A lemon wrapped around a large, drink. It's teleporting is like being drunk. What's wrong with being drunk? Ask a glass of water. It's that sort of thing of recontextualizing what is said before, and that's a big part of what I think is really funny. The Daily Show used to have this introduction which said, at the beginning of every episode, they said more viewers get their news from the Daily Show, more Americans get their news from the Daily Show than any other country. And because you expect them to say any other news program, then,
Right.
but they say any other country, and suddenly it's recontextualizes everything that came before it, and I think it's gold. Anywho, I'm gonna work on a silly drawing.
All right. So somebody post up so I can put something on the screen. And guys, with our time left, we're going to try and go wheels up at 9:30. So this is a perfect time to ask us some questions. And our buddy Sean Chai from the land down under, where Sean Chai is, it is tomorrow. Just sit with that for a second, why don't you? Sean Chai says garden path sentences can be awesome when used right. See, look at that. Not only are we handsome, we're also smart.
Or I'm 0 for 2, but I'll take it.
I mean, come on, like we got to know some stuff. Like what the first time I started saying smiling angelic countenance. Please tell me you didn't look that up. Like, what's a countenance? Oh.
I didn't know I was on Jeopardy.
Yeah, look at this guy. This guy with stupid hat knowing stuff. They hate him. So in this time, if anybody wants to ask us questions, please put them in the chat. I will do my best to get them on. But if you are a lifer of pencil to pencil, you know your mileage may vary. I may very well ignore you. So let's see how you do. Paul Pate, what up, Paul Pate? Paul Pate says, Conley is clever and he draws. Is there anything he can't do?
There's a Kempo form called Statue of the Crane. I can't remember it. I keep trying to do it. I can't do it. So not yet. I can't do it yet.
Like, what's his face? Sedaris. What's not you know the siblings.
Yeah, David
Sedaris. His name falls out of my head every time I try to think of David Sedaris. That's like the Three Stooges were most like I could never say Worcestershire. Like David Sedaris is like a master of the written word. You may call him a cunning linguist, maybe. Right, but it's kind of like, oh man, like I feel really dumb when I read David Sedaris, or I feel really smart that I understood what he was talking about. Our buddy Chris Eliopoulos, what up, Chris? Chris says there was a thing online saying Marvel would be moving out of print comics and just publish through webtoons. Whether or not that's true, do you think the future is digital comics? What a great conversation while we draw digitally. What do you think, you guys? Steve, you want to take a stab at that, and then I'll ask Mike.
I think a future is. I don't know how they're. I've heard a lot of people talk about their app being the way they read Marvel comics, and I think the same goes for DC. That people are reading them digitally. So, I don't know how much money those apps make. I mean, given that they're basically also a huge archive of every comic that came before, you know. They even though Netflix was a repository of old content, adding new content is what brought people in and kept people. So if they were going to move to a streaming subscription service as their primary source of income, or bundling it with whatever HBO's doing, I could see that as being the way Amazon bundles Audible and bundles their streaming service with their Prime. I could see a lot of that happening if whoever is going to own Warner Brothers in the future, whatever that looks like, I could see that being a path forward for them. Disney could do it for sure, bundling it with Disney Plus. Mm-hmm. I don't see them getting rid of comics just yet, just because it's, they're basically selling collector's items. As long as they're making these collectibles, I don't see them moving out of that just yet. But man, if the bloom is off the rose with these superhero movies, and I'm not sure that it is. A lot of people talk like Bring Out Your Dead every summer, but depending on how Endgame does, not Endgame, but Doomsday comes.
Same thing.
Yeah, Endgame 2. I don't know. If the comics are just R&D for movies, then it doesn't really matter that they need to be in paper form. But comics are definitely going to be digital. I mean, they are now. I don't. But the idea about Marvel moving out of print comics altogether, that seems iffy, because Webtoons is largely an advertising model. They'd have to go subscription, like Dropout or something like that.
Mr. Manley, do you want to take a stab at that?
I think the minute they can get rid of print, they'll get rid of it. They don't love print. Disney does not love print. They don't print in America any of their comics. Now, there's people who do great Disney comics, South America and Europe, but they don't give a shit about print comics in America. Their culture is not one of collecting. Their culture is one of merchandise. And they look at Marvel as merchandise, as IP for merchandise. All right? We're old. We have a love of the tactile experience of reading, which further you go past 40 or mid-30s, the quicker that dissipates. So I think it all comes down to money. I don't think they care about the culture of print. I don't think they care about the culture of Comic-Con. I don't think they care about the culture of you getting it slabbed and put it in a box. They don't care anything about that. We care about that because that's how we grew up. But they look at it in a very mathematical way. The second it makes sense to shut down Marvel and to license those characters out to somebody else to make them, they will do it. They will not look back. They don't give a shit about what happens to the direct market. They don't. What they care about is maximizing the IP of Spider-Man or the X-Men. They don't care about, I mean, look how terrible they are with like husbanding their legacy content. They're bloody awful at it. They have always been pretty bad at it. But now we're at the point where it's all about maximizing getting the product in front of people for the least amount of money.
Is there argument can they make an argument that you need the comics because without the comics you can't have the movies?
I don't think so at this point. I don't think so. I don't think there's enough kids reading Captain America as a comic that is even a valid point anymore. It's 50-year-old guys reading Captain America and arguing over stuff. But young people, and again, having taught, you would see, I mean, kids would basically tell me they like Deadpool. A couple of kids would like Deadpool. They're reading everything on their phone. They're reading everything on their tablet. They're not going to go spend $6 for a Batman comic. They don't care what version of Batman it is. They're just not. So if they can read a version of Batman on Webtoons, that's fine for them.
Yeah,
they're not the same collector. They're not like we were, where you would like, oh, I got to find that issue that I don't have. They don't. It really.
Yeah, I agree with that. I mean, that's why I start with the saying they're selling collectibles. They're not selling media, right? The collectibles happen to be media, but
their collectible that they are more concerned about is making a popcorn bucket that they can sell for $75. High ticket collectible item,
right?
Not a floppy. And I know people don't want to. Nobody wants it to go away, but it could there could be a board meeting tomorrow where they go,
sure.
And I think that's more likely than not, honestly.
Yeah, I mean, we started off by talking about the magazines that used to exist, and I didn't imagine them going away. I didn't imagine newspapers having as much trouble as they had. No. I didn't think they relied on classifieds as much as they do. But I think that so far they haven't created much original IP for, if Marvel is a brand, it's never, they have, you could point to, yes, DC's a brand and Kryptonite was created outside of the comics. There are things that were created and tacked on from outside the comic book form and were incorporated. But Marvel seems to be largely, at least the MCU, entirely based on the comics and not necessarily just Stan, Jack, and Steve Ditko's. That they're they've Winter Soldier. It's, yes, that's probably 25 years old now, maybe. But not necessarily what we think of as not even Bronze Age characters, like much more modern age. And I just don't see them adding a lot. Every time they add something to MCU, it's almost always a character dug up from a comic book somewhere.
There's I don't want to belabor this, but there's a side question that will maybe stimulate more conversation. You see what I did there? Paul Pate, what up, Paul Pate? Paul Pate says, will there ever be any new Marvel DC characters and stories and IP? I will say that there's always something new. Now, if you actually read it, is a whole other story, right? Because they make new stuff all the time, and then those new things disappear just as fast because you can't penetrate this veil of nostalgia. It's pervasive, and even some of our buddies who have made stuff for the machine, like our buddy Mike Norton, he created Gravity. Remember Gravity?
Mm-hmm.
And they killed Gravity off like as soon as it got a chance. So they always make new stuff, but back in the time where new things didn't happen and they were a big deal, like I remember like the New Mutants were exciting because they were like, it was different or it was fresh. And now there's so much stuff. It's but I also think that there's also the conversation to have with what's going on through a lot of social media about where Black characters stand in the mainstream and how come there's no new this or how come there's no new that. I think people are so, you ready for this? I might get in trouble for this, but I said it. I feel like comics is so busy staring at its navel. It has no idea knowing what's really going on in the world around it. Right. So even if you create some new smash stuff, nobody's going to breathe air into it because it's not Flash. That's not my Peter Parker. That's not,
Sure.
It's just going to keep eating its own tail. That's how I feel about it.
So, I mean, so in that vein, getting it out of, if they were to get rid of the comics and just do online subscription model, and this is just talking about comic books, that's a very small slice of comics. I mean,
right.
Jamar's in the real area of comics nowadays. Like really, seriously. And the web has got its heavy hitters as well. But the comic books, I mean, if the comic books thing went away and it were subscriptions, maybe Gravity comes back. Maybe, they would try more interesting new things. Because
why would I ever want to create anything for them ever again?
Oh, agreed. No, that's a side issue. Why would someone for a paycheck?
Right. Mike Manley's a perfect example.
Yeah.
Right.
I would never create anything for them ever again.
Right. But a lot of people would. I still feel like there's value in working for these companies in as much as not just the paycheck, but putting yourself on the map.
There's a lot of people who would draw Spider-Man for free.
Yeah.
They would draw a year of Spider-Man or Batman or the Hulk. They would work for completely free just because they think that it would do something for their career, which it actually wouldn't do in the long run. But young people, everybody has their dream, right?
But it does. I do feel like it does something in the long run. I mean, I felt like when I worked for Star Trek, I'm talking about jumping through some hoops to get approved by Shatner and Nimoy. I knew when I was doing that, I was going to get me a free table at conventions.
That's
that I got flown out to the shows because that's not the page rate and it's not a royalty, but it still has value beyond the check, and it put me on a map with an audience I had no access to prior. And so I do think there's a calculation that people can make, but I do think they have to, like what you're saying, Mike, is absolutely true. People have to know that you're going to lose stuff outright, and you have to count on the honor of
count on the
faceless
screwing.
corporations.
You have to count on the screwing, because what they're going to do, just like they did with Brubaker and what's his name that did Winter Soldier, you'll make very little money compared to the IP.
Sure.
You know, and then what happens is you end up feeling very bitter about it, because you go like, well, I created this thing. It was, my idea. I mean, they're very creative when they have these ways of saying, well, you created this character, you took this concept, but actually that concept is a derivative of the other older concept. So even though yours is better and more popular, fuck you. We're not going to pay, you don't get anything for it.
Sure.
Because it's still Batman, and no, we're not going to share. Thanks. Thanks. Yeah. So if the thing is that most young people don't look 10, 15, 20, 40 years down the road, right? They look at now and achieving the dream. But if Mike Mignola had done Hellboy, I always say if he had done Hellboy for Marvel and DC, he'd be screwed now. He'd be totally screwed, because they'd have everybody else doing Hellboy, and Hellboy would be in every comic. But the thing is with those companies is if you create Hellboy, or like I created Darkhawk, I got money from Darkhawk if there was a book with the name Darkhawk on it. I could put Darkhawk in every comic. I get nothing for that.
Right.
He could guest star in every. They can make toys. Then there's all this fine print. Like, well, like I said, I got no money for the Hero Clicks because the Hero Clicks didn't move.
The points of articulation gamble.
Right. Yeah. So they have all these ways of long-term screwing you, because the other part of it is that your relationship with the company is based currently on the people that you're working with, who are likely not going to be there maybe even next week. And when that person goes, that person might like you, that editor might like you, right? That manager may like you, and they know your value and they know you're good. The next guy comes in, doesn't give a shit.
Right.
They don't care. So I say don't do it. I say that if you do your own stuff, which is a harder struggle, but then you go and you work for them, they're hiring you because of what you did
somewhere else,
and then you have a better leg to stand on. I think the comic business could go away any day, and it really comes down to how much money they're making off these films. And if the films stop making billions of dollars and only start making hundreds of millions of dollars, they're gonna start pulling the plug, because all that money goes back into print, keeps that going, right? Because it's like, oh, well, we can take 10%, pinch it out to Marvel or whatever, because we made $1 billion. Oh, now people don't really care about, after if Secret Wars does not look. Fantastic Four film was not a big success. It made money, but it didn't make a lot of money. They're not going to make another one.
Right.
Right. They're not going to make another one. If this next round of films, 5 years from now, they may be saying, well, we'll still make, the Baby Yoda movie didn't make a lot of money. So if this next Star Wars film with Ryan Gosling comes out, doesn't make a lot of money, they'll say Star Wars, people don't care about Star Wars. It'll make money, but the whole thing is you can't just make money. You got to make
money, and
you always have to make more money than you made last time. And none of that has to do with the craft of storytelling or any of the reasons why we like this stuff. And the reasons why we like this stuff has nothing to do with why these people are making stuff. And if you can understand that and you keep that forefront in your mind, you'll have a better understanding of where we are, you know. Teaching always gave me a gut check every fall when I would get a new round of students. And I would always ask them what they're into. What do they read? What do they like to read? How do they watch it? How do they absorb stuff? Right? And the stuff that the way stuff people absorb stuff in 2026 is different than 2020, pre-pandemic. And then it's also different from like 2010 when the iPhone came in. Because before the iPhone came in, people didn't read stuff the way that they read it now. Young people didn't read stuff the way they did it now. So, you know, people's attention spans are also shorter.
There's another question in here. And guys, aren't you loving this episode? I think the 400 people that are watching live, I fudged that a little bit. I fudged the numbers, Steve. I think it would behoove you to like this session on your YouTube app. You see it's like a little thumb. You see that? It's the same. It's in the same place every time you watch the show. Click on that. That tells the rhythm. You know the rhythm. Not the rhythm as a dancer. The algorithm that Pencil to Pencil is worth your algorithm eyeball dollars. So please click that. Why don't you? Thank you.
That's a call to action right there.
You like that? Yeah, you have no excuse. Just click it. Why don't you?
And you can also go to our Patreon and support us.
Oh, word up. Did you get a hold on, Steve? Mike, did they give you a URL yet for
not yet. I'm having to. They're making me do something I got to do this week. So I'm hoping that once that happens, then I have to merge something. So I'm hoping that once that happens, then I'll have my the URL.
All right, here's another question. Our buddy Cruisin' Bill. Cruisin' Bill, what up, Cruisin' Bill? Cruisin' Bill, you're covering up my artwork with your question. Cruisin' Bill says, for Mike, if he's okay discussing, my son asked how they decide to let Dark Hawk keep going or cancel it. These days, they seem to do these 5-issue runs for so many that could have been good as longer projects. What do you have to say about that, Mike?
It's sort of like planned obsolescence. You know, they don't want people to do long runs on anything anymore. They don't want people to do. What they would rather do is have a limited series Darkhawk 1 through 5, and if it sells well, then what they would do is they would do another number 1, and then they would do another number 1.
Another one.
Yeah, and that's all because that's how the retailers have trained the companies to work, right? The retailers have trained the companies to do that, you know. And you know, I'm old, so my idea of what a cartoonist was is completely outdated now. Because my idea of a cartoonist was, you know, somebody like
JAMAR Nicholas,
John Buscema or Gil Kane or one of those guys that drew like 90 issues in a row of Conan, right? That was your thing. You wanted to get a book. If you got a book, then you could stay on the book. And they actually, if you were good, they would want you to stay on the book.
Right.
I chose to leave Darkhawk after 25 issues. They would have had me draw all 50 issues, right? But I decided after 25, I wanted to go on and do some other stuff. The business is completely not like that now. And if you notice that that even guys like John Romita Jr., he doesn't do like every issue of Spider-Man, right? He does like so many, and then they stop and they put something else, and then they come back. You know, they want these like dopamine hits of how many #1 issues with Spider-Man on it, or Batman, or whatever we can get in a year, because all the retailers order high on #1, slash on #2, adjust orders on number 4 or 5, and traditionally, the first issue of any book always sells the most, and every issue after that sells less. There are rare exceptions, but traditionally that's what happens.
Mm-hmm. So thanks for that question, Cruising Bill. And
Mike,
it's just,
Mike, could you share your screen again? And we lost you back here on the dashboard.
Oh, okay. Second.
Sorry, Jamar, you were saying?
I forgot what I was saying. That was a good question. Because, you know, it doesn't make sense maybe to the consumer who like really dug something and now it's gone, you know, and we kind of talk about comics history from the inside, which is what I really enjoy about doing this, having this platform, right? Like, as I used to say in my Detective Boogaloo strip, don't take hip hop from strangers. Don't take your comic book information from non-professionals, right? You know, we could tell you kind of how that works. And even in that period of time where they kind of turned after the Image fiasco, I'll say it a fiasco because it changed the business. They don't want to make superstars anymore, right? Or they don't want to allow it. Kind of like in wrestling, how no one character is bigger than the company. That is really how they do business now.
You can't be The Rock now, right?
No, you can't be The Rock now. You got to be the replaceable guy, right? So even, what was that, when Ringo and Wade were doing Fantastic Four and they decided to just, you know, shift them off the book. And remember when the fans boycotted and made a big stink and they brought them back? And they did that just because it was getting popular. Right? Why would you end something because people like it? That makes zero sense to a fan. But that's the industry we live in. I got on a little rail there, Steve. I mean, am I wrong? Tell me if I'm wrong. I don't.
No. You know, they decided once Image formed that they would never promote artists again.
Right, because they ate that in a very weird way. You know, I think.
Well, because they're not interested in sharing. You know, these companies are interested in making the lion's share and the profit. You know, I always thought when I was younger that if they were willing to screw Jack Kirby, the guy that literally made them billions of dollars, they wouldn't even hesitate to think about screwing me or anybody else. You know, the only reason why Stan's name is on it, he gets to do his version of stuff, is because he was the publisher's nephew.
Wait a minute. You're saying that Stan Lee doesn't write all of my favorite comic books right now? Because that's what the world thinks.
Ghost of Stan Lee writes all your favorite comics.
Rattle your chains, true believer. Yeah.
We had another couple of questions here. Sheldon Martin 999 from the YouTubes says, let's say mainstream comics are now only digital. Would you work for them or go indie? Would you make your comic in print if you go indie? So 2-part question. Would you work for them or go indie? And would you make your comic in print if you then went indie? What do you all think?
You know what? Let me start off by saying this, and I don't know if this will be unpopular, and I want to answer the question, but I think there's also a thing that a lot of people may get wrong about being in comics is that you may assume that everybody in comics wants to draw for the big two, right? Or that everybody that gets into being a cartoonist which I believe is this, you're a storyteller, right? Wants to create things for Marvel, right? And then that goes south. And now what are you going to do? Oh, I better do it myself, which isn't everybody's system. So kind of getting back to the question, I don't really know why anybody would work for Marvel unless they had a really strong compunction to. And then usually how that works is after they get burned out, they cease to work for them. Or they get kicked out and they cease to work for them. And I'm not saying they're like the evil empire or anything, it's just business. But I think people who make comics will make comics. You know, like there's, love or hate John Byrne. Isn't that what he's doing right now? He's just making comics.
Is he still making them? I thought he quit.
Well, that was that whole thing about the, what is it called? The un-X-Men or whatever he's doing now. Isn't he doing like an unsanctioned?
He was doing his fan fiction.
Yeah, the fan fiction thing. He's still making comics. I don't know. Steve, what do you think about what that question was, or am I off base?
I like the question a lot. Indie is the way to go, as Mike was saying about owning your own material. But I do think there's value in. I know it's almost it's me selling out, but if an opportunity to work on a property that would bolster my resume and introduce me to a bunch of new people and get me flown to different conventions where I would end up surreptitiously talking about the Middle Age whenever I got up on stage, pointing people to my Patreon, that would be the way I would go. But like, yeah, I'd love to draw something for Marvel. They're like on my bucket list of people who I haven't worked for. I worked for DC almost accidentally, and Image and Dark Horse and IDW, but it was, I always say, because the hotter artist was not available. But a chance to work on one of those things is, that's why I did a cover for Adventure Time, and then I didn't know that they were reusing that artwork in poster books and in all these other places. It was a work for hire, a single check, but I get to say I worked on Adventure Time, and it was a fun piece to do. It didn't pay poorly. I sold the original art, and so all in all, a good day's work. It beats laying bricks.
Oddly,
but
enough.
What's that?
Oddly enough, he's playing bricks.
But it's not for the check or for as much. But I'm right now working on a project which is work for hire, and it's a project and a IP that I'm a big fan of, and it's a chance to flex in a way. Again, I don't think a business manager would say this is definitely the way to go, but it's fun, and again, beats laying bricks. But I'm not stopping my Patreon or doing my own projects for it.
Well, I like to always kind of end questions like this by saying it's great to have options.
Yeah.
Wherever you are in your career, if you're at a place where you can go, no, thanks, I'm going to do my own thing. That's fantastic.
and they're not mutually exclusive. As long as you keep your eye on creating your own IP, I think there's a lot of older artists who wish they had created their own stuff when they had the opportunities to do so.
Right.
It's one of the lessons from Mike Waringo was that, Saturn Kid never became a thing. I think it was Saturn Kid. I moved the print to the living room. I don't have it in front of me to look at. But he wanted to work on his own stuff, and he was working for, Marvel and DC.
Well, the other thing is, to me, the bottom line is, can you financially make it work doing your own stuff? Right? That's the hard reality. People can say, well, you should do your own thing. Well, you should. Can you make that physically work? Can you make enough money doing it? Some people would rather go have a day job and then do their own thing with no constraints, right? No compromises. I was always very aware just like I was showing you guys in the beginning. You know, Dino Riders was more fun than some of the other coloring books I did. But I did a lot of coloring books that I didn't give a shit about. I didn't care about the Transformers. I never, you know, that was not my thing. But I wanted the job, so I took the job. So there's always a compromise. But I know some artists would go like, what? Be a whore and work for Marvel and work on something I don't know. No way. That's not me. Nobody's telling me what to do. No way. I'm not doing that. I'm a pure artist.
And now let me show you my comic about a vampire cop.
Exactly. You know. So I mean, there's no 100% right answer, but there's the right answer because they're not universal, but there's better answers and better choices for you as an individual. I'm willing to work on something if it pays me enough money that I don't really love, because if I can make enough money that month to pay my rent, I'd rather do that than go work at the post office or work in a restaurant, or, you know, just sell real estate or whatever, right? When I was young, I had a job in an ad agency. I hated that job in the ad agency, and I quit. And I said, I don't want to ever go back and work in a place like this. I don't want to do that. I don't want to work in an ad agency. An ad agency pays pretty good money, pays really good money. But I just hated working in that culture and working with a bunch of people I thought were assholes, right? But I was young enough.
And then he got in the comics.
Right. But I was young enough and willing to make the sacrifice. And just like this Trax Rover thing I'm making, you know, I probably worked on that thing I worked on it over several months because I was also working on the Batman stuff. So it was sort of like a passion project. And sometimes you will work on something like that it didn't pay me any money. But it led me through the effort to an opportunity that I would not have gotten if I didn't do it.
Right.
I wish we had talked about that's a part when we bring Marty Bowman back, our guest from last week. Please check the archives. We talked about him showing his work to Pixar, but we didn't have time to dig into what he showed them. And I think a lot of it was stuff exactly what you're saying, Mike. It was his own stuff. I don't think it was his, designs for the Monopoly Junior board game that necessarily landed the gig there. I think it was his personal projects. They saw his portfolio made of just stuff he did on his own. Like all the work we showed last week, that doesn't have a home. He's producing it, and it's what creates those other opportunities.
You always need to be working for you. There were years when I was really busy at Marvel and DC. But the minute I quit Batman, I decided that I wanted to self-publish. And it took me a while to do it, and it took me a lot of money. And luckily, I was getting my royalties from Batman. But I was very aware of the fact while I was on Batman, and that was literally the best time to be on Batman, it wasn't good for me. It wasn't good for me.
In what way, Mike?
I didn't like the way this, you're a cog in a machine. And sometimes you can be a cog in the machine and the gears are going really good. But sometimes you start getting friction, right? And you start getting friction that you find unpleasant or difficult, unreasonable, right? And that's when you have to start making tough choices. So I decided to leave Batman. And then I decided to take the money that I'd made from Batman, form my own corporation, buy the computers and all that stuff, and start self-publishing, which led to me doing the magazine and self-publishing, which in turn, like Trax Rover, self-publishing led me into working into animation. Again, I didn't make any money on Action Planet. I didn't make a lot of money on Action Planet, right? It didn't fill my coffers directly, but indirectly it did.
Mm-hmm.
It's great.
To me, you know, if I had probably started a year earlier, things may have been different. But with my second issue, that's when Capital City went blam. And then for some reason, I think a lot of the Capital City stores were the stores that ordered my stuff. Because that's right at the end of the black and white boom. Right? So sometimes it's timing, which of course you have no control over. You can do something and you happen to catch the wave, or you can paddle out and like, the wave's gonna come, and no wave ever comes. So you're doing a lot of paddling, but maybe while you're out there you meet somebody, right? So I think that true effort, if it is quality, will be rewarded.
And there's also the choice about working for another company, given that the companies pay so little. The argument like, well, if I'm not going to make any money, I'm going to work for myself. Like, it's like, I can lose money fine all by myself. I don't need any companies to help me.
I talked about this a little bit the other day. I'm a zealot. I'm a zealot. And I know right away when I meet another zealot. And really, I think in order to be hardy enough, durable enough to do this as a living, you really have to be a zealot. I think if you're but I really sort of like, if you're not a zealot, it's when you're going to get good breaks, but then you're going to get bad breaks. And if you're not a zealot, the bad breaks are going to be so hard for you that you're not going to be able to bounce back.
Right.
It's like when I would meet a student and I would get a fresh crop of students in the fall. And there was always the kind of student where I call the spit mouth. They'd come up and they'd be like, "Oh, I can't wait to take your class," and blah, 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 blah. They're like, you're just getting deluged with their exuberance, right?
Yeah.
That's usually the kid who was one of the first people to flunk out, to start, start nosediving.
Really?
It's the quiet kid that had a sketchbook full of drawings. That's the person that had the real potential, not the person who was talking about what they were going to do. No, the person who was doing it.
Right.
Habitually doing it. Every day, sitting and filling the sketchbooks. And sometimes the drawings are nice. Sometimes the drawings are crap, because everybody does crappy drawings in the beginning. But the potential is there because the person is habitual about it. There's no way to discount that. To me, that's the most important thing. Is if you're doing it you're doing it because that's what you really love to do. You'll be doing it on a sunny day, just as emphatically and passionately as you would be doing it on a rainy day. If you're just like a fair weather or a rainy weather person, like otherwise you're outside and you're doing stuff you're doing. If that's you, then you'll probably be really good at something else, but you won't be good at this because you have to put the 10,000 to 30,000 hours into it. And if you don't derive that pleasure, probably more pleasure doing this than anything else, is really hard to be successful.
Right.
People always want to look at the exception to the rule. Well, here's the guy who didn't do this, and then they didn't do that. Here's the gal that didn't do this and didn't do that. And look at them. They're on Twitter, or they're on this, and they're making all kinds. They always want to look at the exception. And I always say, you're not the exception, because if you're the exception, you would already be doing it.
That's very true.
And all the people I know that are friends of mine that I've known a long time who've been doing it, they were all that way. I look at somebody like, Brett Blevins, who I've known 40 years. He was exactly that type of person. He still is. He just fills sketchbooks and drawings full of amazing doodles, things that nobody will probably ever see, because he's just passionate about it. It's hard to ignore that. People like to try to ignore it, and they try to, they've got excuses. Well, I didn't do this because I didn't go to that school, or I didn't know that person, or my uncle wasn't Stan Lee, or whatever. And the most successful people usually are not those types of people.
We are running out of runway. Thank you guys for sharing your art. There's lots of questions. I want to try to bang these out real quick. Steve, you okay with hanging out for just a couple seconds later?
Oh yeah, absolutely.
All right. Sheldon Martin 9999999 says, "Are you guys all working on a comic right now?" So, maybe to give Sheldon a little kind of rule of the road, all of your expert cartoonists you see on the screen have projects. Mike Manley is the artist behind 2 nationally syndicated newspaper strips, The Phantom and Judge Parker, concurrently. Stone Cold Steve Conley is not only in your dreams, but also the creator of The Middle Age, a fantastic web comic that's been running for how many years now, Steve?
It's coming up on its 10th birthday.
Oh my goodness.
It's 47th year.
And myself, JAMAR Nicholas, I am the author-illustrator of a middle grade graphic novel series at Scholastic Graphics. So yes, we are all working on comics as we speak.
Cop it, why don't you?
Cop it, why don't you? And also that's, something that we don't say enough that maybe you guys just get, is that we all are working professionals, all of us. So, there's a lot of talking, not a lot of walking sometimes when you kind of look out on the internet and look in the corner.
Literally not walking, because you're too busy sitting
right?
drawing.
Yeah.
Go take a walk.
A lot of pooping.
Emily Druin says, "Congrats, Stephen. Happy 10."
Oh.
Hey, Emily. Good to see you. Good to see you. All right. Before we pencils down, there's like one more question, or maybe 2. Hold on. I'll see what I can do here. And then we'll do some plugs for coffee break. We'll conjure Drostradamus and we'll get out of here. All right, hold on, comments. All right, so next is Sean Chai says, talking earlier about story retellings, was story from any time or medium would you want to? Oh, are there any stories from any time or medium that you would like to adapt into a comic, Steve?
Stories from any time or medium. Boy, no, generally not. Not to comics, because I'm old and I know my runway's running out, and I'm kind of using my time. I'm trying to use my time wisely and try to work on my own stuff. And so adapting something from another medium or another time or something like that would probably be not the best use of my time. I mean, if there's something I could, I can't imagine what that might be. How about you guys?
Mike?
No, I don't think there's anything I would want to adopt. I mean, I did that. I posted the Weave World stuff. I did the adaptation of the Clive Barker book for Marvel. But at this point, I have the 2 strips that I use to make my living. Anything else, I just want to do my own stuff.
Yeah.
I don't. I always wanted to do my own stuff. I started out trying to do my own stuff, and I've tried to do my own stuff several times, but I would not. No. And the thing is, when you do that, there's always the issue of getting the rights, and then wrestling with the rights. And then what happens with the rights in the long run? Does the estate get to say, well, you can have these rights for a few years, and then they go, well, now we don't want to give you those rights anymore. No, it's a lot of work. I still think you do better to do your own stuff. And the thing is it may not be your first idea. It may be your 10th idea. I always try to remind people that someone like Jack Kirby, we always think of as like, this hugely successful artist, which he was. But he also failed a lot. He did stuff that wasn't successful. We tend to forget that. We tend to forget that he tried a lot of stuff that in the 50s wasn't successful. And a lot of guys in the 50s kept jumping. Him and Kubert, there's a lot of guys that were jumping, kept trying to do stuff, comic strips, starting their own comic book companies. And he ended up at Marvel almost as like the end. And a lot of guys, a lot of creators, big creators, people who were successful in the beginning actually got out of comics in the 50s and they went into advertising. So, no.
Yeah. Kirby's work at Ruby Spears in like the 80s. Like he's found himself in animation then, right?
Yep. And he made more money doing stuff for Ruby Spears than he probably ever made working, he was getting health insurance. That's the other thing people forget. It's like, I know in the case of Al Williamson, when he was inking for Marvel, he was making more money per month than he did working on Star Wars or Secret Agent Corrigan. And he got health insurance, which when he was doing both strips previously or doing comic books, he had to go out and buy health insurance.
Right.
So he was making more money inking. So, yeah, I don't know. I would say, it can be fun to adapt stuff, but if you're not going to own those rights for forever, what happens if you do something you really like and everybody goes, oh, great, but it's Conan Properties, and Conan Properties gets bought by somebody else, and then all of a sudden they go like, well, those rights have lapsed because you usually only get the rights for so many years. No, we're not going to give you those rights again. Or the rights are going to be so expensive, Yeah. And it's a lot of work. It's a lot of work to adapt.
Also, I could see, though, I would love to, I've thought about this because I did reach out to Don Bluth and the Don Bluth Company a few years back trying to get the ability to do. I would love to have done like a 20-page story with Sir Quimp, the hero from the Middle Age, and Dirk the Daring from the Dragon's Lair game. I thought a crossover like that would be fun. So I don't, and that's not adaptation as much as trying to leverage the popularity of a much more famous product to kind of elevate the awareness of mine. So it's again, it's not because I've, Citizen Kane's great. It's not because it spoke to me, or Casablanca is fantastic and I want to draw Bogart.
All right, guys, that's it. Pencils down. My computer is melting. Like it kind of crashed my share, so now I can't get back to sharing Leon because it keeps saying try another screen. This isn't working anymore. So there's one last question that kind of has nothing. Well, it always has something to do with this, but it's a little different. This is for me. Comic fan who walks says, what can you tell us about the August 8th cartoon library event? What Comic fan who walks is referring to is part of the National Cartoonist Society Rubin Awards and Conference. Information that I've been putting out into the world. Some of you guys have been paying attention and know that the 80th anniversary of the NCS is this year. The Rubin Awards will be taking place in Columbus, Ohio at the in conjunction with the Billy Ireland Museum on OSU's campus. It is the mecca for cartoonists. If you haven't been there or don't know what I'm talking about, use Google as your friend. But also part of that is after the Rubens are over on Saturday, the CXC, Billy Ireland Museum, and also Scholastic are working in conjunction for a giant public cartooning event where there'll be several NCS people at tables, I think at the Billy Ireland. I'm not exactly sure where this is happening, on Saturday doing sketches and signing. And also your boy JAMAR Nicholas is involved in some programming as well. That afternoon, I will be taking part of a ticketed event with these people. Huh, look at that.
Wow, what a lineup.
Look at that. It's almost like all the things I've been saying are actually true. So Dave Pilkey, creator Dogman, JAMAR Nicholas, Jim Benton, Maria Scrivan, and Raina Telgemeier will be there on stage, drawing for you and your children, and also making the world smile. So see what I did? I think I owe Raina $5 now. So I'm very excited about that. So if you want more information, go to nationalcartoonist.com and you will be satisfied. So thank you guys so much. I don't know if you guys want to show what you were working on our way out the door.
Sure.
All right, so I'll put you on stage, Mike. What were you doing?
It's fun to do this kind of cartooning because I usually don't get a chance to do it.
I like that dog's mustache. I like the various mustaches. They're fantastic.
Yeah, and at this time, I was really looking at, when I originally drew this stuff, I was looking at a lot of the old Disney comics. Floyd Gottfredson, who used to do Mickey Mouse. I really love that stuff. So it's fun for me to just do something that's completely different than what I normally do.
Love those hands.
Yeah, that's very, Preston Blair kind of. I was looking at all that. I was just eating that stuff up then. So I again, to me, it's like I love doing all kinds of different things. I always did. So to me, it's just part of. There you go, Space Ghost.
Oh, that's good.
Nice, yeah. So feed. I think you always have to feed your art heart. Even when you're working for somebody else, you can be working on something that's really cool. The lesson I take forward is you always feed your art heart. You're always doing something just simply for you, simply for the act of creating, because, it can be rewarding working for other people and working on this other stuff, but it can also be very draining. a lot of. I'm drained today. You know, I had to crank out a week of Phantom, and it's very draining. So actually, just this little bit of time, just kind of noodling around in Clip Studio on a 40-something-year-old thing that I drew, kind of feeds me in a way that working on the Phantom doesn't.
Yeah.
I think people probably have a hard time understanding that, because it's like, what? Well, if you're working on Batman, that should be the only thing you care about.
Batman.
But you will find after you've done it that that's not the case.
Yeah, that's great. Guys, I had a lot of fun tonight. We're going to start wrapping up. If you are interested in more of this programming, I hope you have liked this episode and also subscribed, and also hit the alert bell. So
and our Patreon, support our Patreon.
And support the Patreon. And I hope that you are also sharing this with your constituents. I will give you a little rule of the road. Tomorrow I will be back here for coffee break. Well, coffee break with JN, where you can watch me drink a cup of coffee and run my mouth. It's a long-standing tradition here on the Pencil to Pencil channel, where it has its own community and language. Look at that. 9 p.m. EST. And if you haven't checked it out before, you're just like, I'm just waiting for Manley to come back. Give me a chance. You might enjoy it. Yeah, but where's Manley?
They don't say that.
Make mine manly. They say it every week in the chat. Cruisin' Bill says, thanks for another high-quality stream. Thank you, Cruisin' Bill. Appreciate you. Guys, we're going to wrap it up. We went a little over, but not too much. My YouTube shorts are filled with Sopranos reels. I don't know why. I send them to Mike every time I get them, because we watched all the Sopranos as it happened. So you know the new patron saint of Pencil to Pencil, the Sorcerer Supreme, Dr. Paulie Walnut, says, hey, Mike, Drostradamus predicted all of this.
Hey, D.
What are you going to do? And what he predicted is that we are in the end game now. And before we go into that cold, dark night, please make sure that you have sanitized and washed your Kirby hands.
Yes, no explosive diarrhea.
That's right.
Back explosive diarrhea. Back.
Oh, I love it. The Marinara Sorcerer Supreme. I love it. All right, guys. We'll see you tomorrow for coffee break. Be good to each other. And get the drawing. What are you waiting for?
Internets. Are you drawing now?
Bye, internet. Good night.